What's going on, guys? Welcome back to Nick 4K. Today we are checking out a video by the Cozy Kino Show, and the title of his video is called The Lord of the Rings, Why It Remains Undefeated. So I am a movie collector. I have hundreds of 4K Blu-rays, hundreds of Blu-rays. I watch a movie every day. Pretty much, if I can watch more, I try, but I have kids and a family, and I don't have as much time to do all that stuff, but I always try to watch a movie all the time just to kind of get a better sense. Even if it's one of those things where it's a bad movie, I'll still try to watch it just to kind of give it a shot. I think that the Lord of the Rings trilogy is the best trilogy slash movies that we've ever seen, and I think, unfortunately, that we'll ever see. I don't think we'll ever see a trilogy that ever meet those heights, and I just think it's one of those things where it hit at the perfect time, and it just blew up. It was just so good. And I know I talk about it a lot whenever I do Lord of the Rings video, but I have the Lord of the Rings movies in DVD. I have it in 3 different Blu-rays, and I also have it in 3 different 4Ks. Wait, 1, 2, 3. Okay, no, I only have it in 3 different 4Ks. I'm not that bad. So yeah, you could say I am a big fan, and I'm excited to see what he's going to say about this. So if you guys enjoyed this video, want to see more like this, make sure to like, subscribe for more. And if you have any cool ideas for future videos you want to see me do reaction reviews on, let me know in the comments. But with that said, let's begin.
I think we can all agree that popular, high-budget Blockbuster Cinema has, for a while now, been on a downwards trajectory. Despite all the staggering budgets and huge stars, despite all the different ways we can watch this stuff nowadays, something very fundamental seems to have gone missing. You know of what I speak. The heart, the soul, the passion. These elements that have defined epic storytelling,
the magic,
from the Odyssey and Beowulf to Seven Samurai and Bridge on the River Kwai. Well, they're becoming harder and harder to find in the realm of cinema, lost in an ever-deepening sea of formulaic plots, rushed CGI, low-contrast, murky compositions, shot-reverse shots on dull green screen backgrounds, drowning in intertext.
Real quick, I can't believe they approved this. Marvel has a bad track record for letting like bad CGI get by. Look at this. Look at this. Look at this. Look at that. The MCU is the highest grossing movie franchise of all time. And they hiring a high schooler kid with an After Effects. And actually, you know what? That is doing a disservice to high school kids with After Effects. I think a high school kid who just learned After Effects a month ago could do a better effect than this. And they approved this. And this is what it is. This is how it's always going to be. Maybe one day I do think that Marvel should go back and fix some of the more crappy CGI it did for some movies. I'd be okay with that if they wanted to re-release them.
Murky
I'd take that, but yeah.
Shot-reverse shots on dull green screen backgrounds, drowning in intertextuality and references and cameos and quips and laziness. Nothing can be sincere anymore. Nothing can be simply played straight. TV is now cinema. Cinema is now TV. Art? That's now content. Hey, that piece of content did pretty well. Let's make a sequel. And 3 spin-offs. You know what? Just make it a cinematic universe. Sure, independent art house cinema is still great. In fact, it's probably better than it's ever been. I feel like most year-end best films of the year lists these days are consistently carried by companies such as A24, alongside the small select group of reliable auteurs who are actually given enough creative freedom to make something original and interesting. But sometimes I just want to watch a well-made blockbuster which respects itself, which respects its audience, which is actually trying really, really hard.
Can I stop for a second again, guys? That scene. This scene, man. Oh, wow. This scene, like, teleports me to, like, simpler times. You know when you're watching a movie that you used to watch as a kid, and like you forget about the movie, or not necessarily forget about the movie, but you forget about the scene, you forget about how that scene made you feel, and then you rewatch it as an adult, and it just teleports you to a different time. This is one of those scenes. Like, it makes you happy, obviously, because it's from a good times, right? But it also makes you sad because those times are over now. I love that scene. Just Frodo just chilling. He's just chilling there in the woods, hanging out, all happy. Okay, my nostalgia trip is
well-made
over.
blockbuster,
Let's continue.
which respects itself, which respects its audience, which is actually trying really, really hard. On a completely unrelated note, I just got done watching the entire 4K remastered extended editions of Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings trilogy in the cinema. I'm still not exactly sure why cinemas across the world decided to screen the Lord of the Rings extended editions back to back to back. I can't remember that ever happening before, but I'm not complaining. These are some of my favorite films of all time, and
I heard about
of
that,
course
actually.
selected the opportunity to watch what I consider to be the definitive versions of these three masterpieces in the theatre. And yes, the experience was incredible, obviously. However, sitting in the same cinema where I usually watch contemporary movies really got me comparing Lord of the Rings to every other epic blockbuster that comes out today. And I emerged from the cinema after finishing Return of the King with a few main questions. How on earth did they pull that off? And what the hell happened? How did we go from my brother, my captain, my king to somehow Palpatine returned? Well, I have a few ideas.
You know why? Because Rise of Skywalker, that scene, somehow Palpatine returned. Well, how did he return? Oh, you wanted to find out? Here's this book. You gotta pay $20 for it. You can read the book then, and then you know. There you go. You're welcome. Because not only do you have to pay for the ticket, if you want to actually know real stuff or real information about what's going on in this movie, you got to read the book or you got to play the game. Oh, or you got to do the Fortnite event. They did Fortnite. They did Palpatine Fortnite. That's how they explained it. Was in Fortnite. I forgot about that. That is a problem because they don't care about telling you the narrative when you're watching the damn movie. They're trying to get you to buy all these other things so you can understand what's going on in the movie. It's just like, why can't I just sit back? You tell me what's going on. Tell it to me good. Make sure it makes sense. And that's it. For a long time, I complained about like J.J. Abrams and specifically Rian Johnson messing up Star Wars. And I don't know if it's even their fault anymore. I really think that they were actually trying to make something good and Disney made them make something bad on purpose. I don't know why, but I just feel like studios are doing that on purpose for some reason, and I don't know why. They were given arguably the biggest cinematic franchise and fumbled that ball. I'm not going to talk about that though. We're talking about Lord of the Rings.
Adaptations are always going to be difficult, okay? Literature, cinema, they're just such different storytelling mediums, each with their own strengths and limitations. Of course, a ton of challenges are going to arise. What do you include? What do you leave out? How do you best capture the essence and soul of the original work while converting it to the big screen? And sure, there will always be those die-hard Tolkien purists who were disappointed by some of the changes Peter Jackson and co. made to the original source material. Like, for example, the removal of Tom Bombadil, Glorfindel, and the entire scouring of the Shire. Frodo...
I will always defend the removal of Tom Bombadil. I don't think he fits in the story that they're telling in this, honestly. And I will defend the not including the scouring of the Shire because the story had already ended by that point. The scouring of the Shire is just like a little extra, that's like a DLC, right? Like that's not part of the main story. Remove that. I'm glad they did.
Frodo telling Sam to go home, the Witch King of Angmar breaking Gandalf's staff, as well as the character alterations to the likes of Gimli, Faramir, and Denethor, among others. However, I think that we can pretty much all agree that, for the most part, considering just how monumental and daunting of a task adapting Tolkien's original books is, especially when working within the constraints and expectations of a major studio, Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings trilogy is incredibly respectful to what came before it. This becomes especially clear when watching the hours upon hours of behind-the-scenes footage from the trilogy, where you get to see just how much everyone loved and respected the source material, and just how committed they were to retaining the spirit of the books. I'll talk about this more later, but the crew's utter dedication and meticulous attention to detail is so evident when watching these movies. From the design of the costumes, to the construction of the sets, to the authenticity of the dialogue, you can just tell how much everyone who worked on these 3 movies were completely immersed in Tolkien's world, often reading the books on set and constantly consulting with Tolkien experts to ensure that they honored the source material.
You know, I just watched these movies again like 3 months ago, and because of this video, I'm gonna have to watch them again tonight. Dang you, Cozy Kino Show, you got me again.
This great quote from Peter Jackson, which I won't include here because I'll probably get a copyright claim, but basically he's discussing how he didn't want to insert his own baggage, his own politics into the trilogy, because The Lord of the Rings is not his story. It's Tolkien's. And I think that's such a good mindset to have when it comes to adaptation, when it comes to following and respecting what came before. It's incredibly refreshing to hear, especially in 2024, a strange time in cinema where it kind of feels like many of the people behind some of the biggest franchises don't even really like or respect the source material they're drawing from. And this is no more clear than in Star Wars, which I don't think is a franchise anyone on the internet has ever really spoken about before. But seriously, if I could attribute the failure
1 or 2
of
people have
Disney
talked
Star
about it
Wars
before,
to one
for sure.
thing, other than, capitalism, the drive to make as much money as possible over taking your time and actually making something good, it would be that they still do not seem to understand nor have any interest in figuring out what made those first few films so good in the first place. But not only this, it seems as if they don't even like or respect what came before, which is kind of bizarre when you say it out loud, but that's the situation we find ourselves in. It is not a coincidence that the only well-received Disney Star Wars products, being Andor, Rogue One, and the first 2 seasons of The Mandalorian, are the only things which clearly respect and honor the original trilogy, while of course striking out and doing their own thing, trying something new. And I think this nicely links into my next point, which involves one of the best attributes the Lord of the Rings trilogy has, and something which is mostly missing from modern blockbusters. When I first watched The Lord of the Rings, or for that matter, Sam Raimi's Spider-Man trilogy, there would often be moments where, I'll be honest, I straight up cringed, okay? I didn't understand what the filmmakers were doing. It all felt a bit too camp and over-emotional for me. And it's funny looking back on it now, because I think what had happened is that I had just been so exposed to the post-ironic, cynical, self-aware storytelling which dominates cinema these days, that I did not recognize sincerity. Let's just take the ending of Fellowship, for example, when Frodo helps Sam onto the boat. I thought it was silly. I thought it was melodramatic. I was begging for someone to break the tension with some clever Joss Whedon quip. And looking back, I just want to slap myself in the face because, like I said, sincerity is one of the Lord of the Rings trilogy's best attributes.
That's a good point.
We need to get back to films like these which actually just play it straight. Now look, of course, there are jokes in these movies, but they're never done cheaply. They never undercut a dramatic moment. I mean, the only example I can think of which even comes close to this is Pippin asking where they are going after the Fellowship is formed.
That's perfect.
But honestly, I think it completely works.
It's
because
perfect.
First of all, the line is delivered at the very end of the scene, therefore not undermining any of the drama. And second of all, it's completely in line for his character and the arc he goes on of becoming a more mature person.
Yeah, you know what? The thing is, that's like the Ragnarok issue. Like, Ragnarok kind of did it, and then Thor: Love and Thunder overdid it. It's one of those things where it's like something serious has happened, and then they turn it into a joke. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work. Like, could you imagine at the end when Boromir was sitting there with arrows in his chest, and Aragorn was like looking at him like, "Oh no, Boromir!" Oh, and Legolas just walked over and like grabbed them, like, "Oh, you know what? I ran out of arrows. Thanks, Boromir," and pulled it right out of him. Like, they make a joke out of that scene. That's how like modern cinema does stuff like that. Like, let dramatic things be dramatic. Let scenes be sad. That's just one of those things where I definitely agree that modern cinema has kind of lost that.
Here's the thing, man. I'm not completely against this postmodern, self-aware style of storytelling. I think it's something people like Dan Harmon do very well, and obviously characters like Deadpool, it's the whole point of their character. I'm not saying everything needs to be played completely straight, but we definitely seem to have overcorrected in recent times, if that makes sense. I cannot tell you how refreshing it is to watch the Lord of the Rings trilogy in 2024 and to be completely swept up in the emotions, and to not feel like a joke is being played on me, to not feel like every character in the film knows they are in a film, because it gets boring kind of quickly, you know, whereas the more sincere tone of Lord of the Rings, well, it's timeless. I mean, look at one of the most critically and commercially successful films of the past few years, Top Gun Maverick. Why did that movie do so well?
Great movie.
Sure, it was well made, you know,
so
Tom
good.
Cruise, you can't really go wrong there. But honestly, I think it's just because it was a good film which wore its heart on its sleeve, you know? It was genuine, candid, and to be fair, I do think these types of movies are coming back. We just had Furiosa last month, and Dune Part 2 earlier this year, which I will touch upon more in a bit, as I actually feel like it's this generation's answer to Lord of the Rings. I guess all I'm really saying is that I hope this sincerity can continue to spread back into films, perhaps even into the most mainstream corners of popular cinema. Which brings us to the final and most important reason as to why Lord of the Rings is still undefeated after all these years. It's an obvious one, but it has to be said. Okay, so I wasn't exactly sure how to phrase this one, but it is basically the idea that seemingly every single person who worked on the Lord of the Rings trilogy cared immensely about the project. You know, they all fully bought into Peter Jackson's vision, put their heart and soul into whatever they were doing, but more than that, they actually went beyond what was expected of them, and it really shows in the final product. I cannot think of anywhere better to start in regards to this other than the music. Now look, Howard Shore, he could have with some effort composed a solid 8 out of 10 musical score for this trilogy. No one would have questioned it, the guy would have still received a ton of accolades and of course his paycheck. And I would be sat here right now saying, yeah, Howard Shore, he did a good job on those Hobbit movies. But no. Instead, he decided to compose, in my opinion, not just the greatest musical score in the history of film, but one of the best collections of music that you can listen to today. The absolute...
You know, it's so strange. You know how they say that guys think about the Roman Empire like every day? Well, I think about like a Lord of the Rings song every day. I think about at least one every so often. Occasionally, like in my mind, like when I'm playing a video game and I'm starting to run down a hill towards like enemies or something like that, my brain will start playing the da na 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 na. Or if I'm just out on a walk, it's a nice day, I'm going out for a walk, my brain will start playing the Shire. Do 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 do. Lord of the Rings, I love it. It's so good. Like everything's so good about this movie.
Around
so good.
130 leitmotifs for the Lord of the Rings. A leitmotif, if you didn't know, are those short melodies you hear in movies which are associated with a particular person, place, or idea. And pretty much all of the ones Howard Shore composed for this trilogy are incredible. There are more memorable tunes in the Lord of the Rings than any other franchise, but what makes them even better is just how well they're integrated into the films, how much they elevate certain moments. The classic example of this is the Fellowship theme, which we hear fragments of throughout the first half of the first movie, almost like Shore is teasing us. But it's only played in its full glory once the Fellowship is assembled, and it's what makes that scene of what is basically just 9 people walking past a rock feel so powerful. Another great example of this is the Rohan theme, which again, throughout the first, maybe third of the Two Towers, is played on a single hardanger fiddle, conveying Rohan's despair and frailty. It is only when Gandalf frees King Theoden and he unsheaths his sword that we hear the theme in all its orchestral glory. Fun fact, this is one of my favourite scenes in film history. But there's just so many examples of this.
It's a good scene.
I'd like to think there was a conversation where Peter Jackson was like, "Hey Howard man, how's it going? Yeah, we're doing this scene where some beacons are set on fire, basically. Can you come up with something? It doesn't need to be anything too crazy, I'm sure you must be very tired by now." And Howard Shore was like, "Yeah, no problem, man, I'll send you over the MP3.
No, he was like the Michael Jordan meme. He was like, and I took that personally, and he delivered, for
Actually listened to it, and just broke down crying, because it was one of the greatest pieces of music he'd ever heard. And here's the thing, Howard Shore didn't just swoop in during post-production and smash out the score in a few months, as is often the case these days. No, the guy was involved from the very beginning. beginning, seeing the potential of the films and wanting to create something that would stand the test of time. Apparently he would constantly visit the sets, talking to the cast and crew, and of course reading the books while he composed. Almost like he was using Tolkien's writing as a reference, and you can really hear this when listening to the score. You can feel the spirit of the books in every instrument, to the point where I personally will only read the books now while also listening to Shaw's musical score. It's become that essential to the Lord of the Rings experience. But here's the thing, man. Everything I've just said about Howard Shaw, about his passion and belief and desire to exceed what was expected of him, well, it applies to basically everyone who worked on these movies, you know? I could tell you 100 more stories about so many different members of the cast and crew. From those two blokes who spent 2 whole years of their life just linking rings into chainmail, all the way up to the big man himself, Peter Jackson, who in the span of a few years basically went from a director of low-budget, gory horror comedy flicks to the spiritual successor to David Lean. I mean, these 3 movies are so epic in their scope and so well directed. Jackson with this trilogy essentially boils down 100 years of cinematography and camera techniques into 3 movies. It looks bold, it feels inventive.
It's crazy that like these movies are known as some of the best movies ever to be made, and they made a lot of money, and other companies looked at these movies and instead of putting the time and effort and money into making amazing films, they just didn't do that. In fact, in a lot of ways, they just did the exact opposite. And they're like, why aren't we making money? Why aren't people liking our movies? Why aren't we making money? Because he did the exact opposite of what Lord of the Rings did. Lord of the Rings had heart, man. They had love, and not just like the main guy in charge. You know, everybody in this production was just they loved the movie and they wanted to do the best they could. You know, they weren't just there for the paycheck. They were there to actually make something big, and they did. That's great.
And Jackson strikes a really great balance between practical effects and CGI. Sure, some of the CGI is beginning to date a little, but it's never too jarring because it's usually only there to enhance the incredible practical effects, which of course are never going to age. When you really think about it, it is truly remarkable just how competent everything about the Lord of the Rings trilogy is. There really isn't a weak link throughout the whole thing. There's no performance which is anything less than excellent. Of course, people like Ian McKellen and Bernard Hill, rest in peace, are gonna be amazing. But even someone like Orlando Bloom, who, I'll be honest, I don't think is the greatest actor of all time, even he gets it. Do you know what I mean? He understood the assignment. There were no shortcuts taken throughout this whole trilogy. There was no one on set who didn't take the project fully seriously because it was merely fantasy. And I feel like this universal brilliance which the Lord of the Rings trilogy has, when combined with the sheer respect it has to Tolkien's work, when combined with its pure and wholesome sincerity, well, it creates this true lightning in a bottle kind of feel. The kind of...
Yeah, you know what? I will say that the one, I guess you could say, downside is that some of the CGI doesn't hold up as well as it used to. And it's a lot more prevalent in the 4K versions of these movies. I think it's one of those things where like it's not that big of a deal, but it does kind of take you out a little bit. So I don't usually like when people go back and they change some stuff in their movies, but I would be okay if they went back to the Lord of the Rings trilogy and they just cleaned up some of the CGI. Just changing a few things here and there, nothing big. I don't want to have like a big CGI creature walk through the frame so I can't see things for like 5 seconds like in A New Hope. I don't want that. I just want some of the CGI cleaned up. That's it.
The feeling you maybe only get once in a generation. Like I've already said, Dune is the only thing which I feel like
maybe for the 8K
close to
transfer,
equaling the Lord of the Rings in terms of a high budget, really well executed, epic story with mainstream appeal. And once again, I think the reason that is that they managed to find the perfect guy to direct the project, someone who was actually passionate and knowledgeable about the original source material, and then they gave him the time and freedom to make something special. Of course, I understand that with all these studios, money is the most important thing. I'm not denying that, but it feels like with Lord of the Rings, and now with Dune, it wasn't the only thing that was on everyone's minds, and I feel like that's the environment you need to make something special. It's why stuff like The Hobbit and The Rings of Power and the Star Wars sequels and a million other things which have been released in the past 20 years just feel so hollow and empty. And look, there may come a time where even the bland, lifeless conveyor belt drivel we get today is seen as art compared to what came next. Or, on the other, more positive side of things, there may come a time where heartfelt, well-made, epic blockbusters come out all the time, where cinemas are filled with passion projects such as Dune or Lord of the Rings. But even if that day does come eventually, something tells me that the Lord of the Rings will always remain undefeated. It's just that good. Thanks for watching.
For real. Great video. Great video. Amazing video, guys. Go check out the Cozy Kino show. I'll leave a link to his channel in the description below. Lord of the Rings, it just can't be touched. It never will be touched, and that's like I'm glad that it will never be touched, but I'm also sad because that means that we're never going to get something on that level ever again. It's always just going to be more consume, buy my product, consume, buy my product, consume. It's just going to keep on doing that. It's just, that's the future. And with the rise of AI, we're going to see a lot more stories that are just a lot more formulaic, and it is what it is. So, what do you guys think about the Lord of the Rings? Do you like it as much as me? Do you not like it? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you find any videos like this you want to see me do reviews on, make sure to leave those in the comments. And of course, for more videos like this, please make sure to like, subscribe, turn notifications for more. But with that said, guys, I will catch you in the next one. Peace.